Once considered career harikari, taking an extended break mid-career is now not only accepted but encouraged by many top employers as a means of retaining and engaging top talent. In fact, over a third of those businesses rated as the best places to work in Europe offer some form of paid or unpaid sabbatical. Career breaks can, of course, be a critical means of recharging, resetting, and moving closer to the life we want. But of course, not all time out of the office is a whirlwind of pasta, yoga gurus, and self-discovery, like Eat, Pray, Love. For many, there are less happy reasons for taking a break: redundancy or severance, serious illness, mental or physical, or the need to care for a loved one. Hello, I'm Lisa Malone, General Manager, Procurious, and welcome to our August webinar, Out of Office Career Breakthrough: Why Taking a Mid-Career Break Can Be a Smart Move. I'm joined today by Ruji Mahmood, VP, Functional Excellence and Procurement Programs Director at DSM, Anne Behrens, Principal AMB Procures, and Tony McGalley, former Executive Search and now General Manager of The Source, a recruitment business dedicated to finding the brightest minds in procurement. Welcome all. Anne and Ruji, can I start with you both? With summer upon us in the Northern Hemisphere, not that you necessarily know it in London today, I'm sure many people are listening and dreaming of taking some time off, be that a few weeks or something longer term. But despite the reported shift in employer attitudes, few of us feel brave enough to do so. Financial security, access to promotions, or simply feeling overwhelmed about how to broach this subject with our current or prospective employers stop many of us from taking the plunge. Ruji, let's start with your story. Your career break was relatively recent. Tell us about what led you to take that leap. Was there a light bulb moment, or was it something that you came to gradually?
Thank you for that question, Lisa. I wouldn't really say there was a light bulb moment as such, and actually it wasn't even really planned. You see, my career was advancing in the right direction, and I had a lot of opportunities coming my way. And on the surface, I guess everything was looking quite fab, but for some reason, I just didn't feel that way. I started my career journey, I guess, where I had a clear purpose, and it was of creating an identity for myself. But I was finding myself constantly being challenged to fit in. And I did try. I took feedback and coaching and mentoring and did the whole self-reflection, read a lot of books, and then I realized actually what happened was I lost my purpose. And that's what was missing and why I wasn't feeling fab. And I needed to feel fab again. I needed my purpose. So I had a conversation at home, at work, and with a few close individuals. And everybody thought I was crazy taking a break at such a stage when everything was, like I said, at the surface looking fab. But who knew me knew very well that I was serious. So with nothing lined up and not even my CV updated, I just went for it. No plan for what I was going to do or how long even I was going to be on my break. In the end, I ended up taking 8 months. During the first month, I stayed connected and tried to follow a lot of guidance and advice from others. Then decided I wasn't taking a break. In fact, I was doing quite a lot of work. So what I decided to do was stop and kind of disconnect. And I spent it traveling with my family. I ticked lots of boxes off those, the list you have of things to do around the house. I watched a lot, and I mean a lot of daytime TV, read some books, spent some time with extended family, and I ended up exploring some new interests. I didn't follow any process of reflection or self-discovery. I guess you could say I simply just enjoyed life and let life happen, and I did it all unapologetically.
That sounds a wonderful way to spend some time, Ruji. And in your case, you were a senior director with McDonald's, but after 25 years, you decided to step out and take the time to reset and refresh. Tell us how you arrived at the decision to step out of the big corporate world and into procurement entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Lisa. This was a very difficult decision for me, having always worked for a large, recognizable company, but there were really two primary reasons. First, I wanted more flexibility to spend time with my family, to finish a graduate degree, to travel and pursue some other interests. And second, I wanted to fulfill a lifelong goal of building a startup business. I also felt like Ruji that I needed a purpose and a challenge in my career, and I knew it would have to include learning something new. So while considering this new path, I talked at length with friends, family, and even senior leadership at my current employer, finding consistent support for my decision to pursue this change. It made sense to them, and then it made sense to me. When I made the decision to leave my corporate role, it was both uncertain but very exciting. And I chose to focus on advising supply chain leaders because it really allowed me to continue work in a field where I had expertise, I had a strong network, and I really loved the work. Founding my own business would really allow me to help others in my field, give me the ability to work on a variety of projects in different industries while pursuing some of my personal goals. Leaving a company and a team that I loved was very difficult, but I felt strongly that if I didn't take this chance at a time in my life when I was healthy, energetic, and motivated to pursue so many goals, I would regret it later. And so I took the plunge, and I have not regretted it since.
Anne and Ruji, I guess you were both fortunate enough to make a conscious decision to step out, and not everyone is so lucky. But Ruji, did you still feel trepidation about taking time out when you already were in the midst of such a booming career?
Absolutely, Lisa. I also was very conscious about my financial responsibilities. I still have my children fairly young and all the the bills and mortgage to consider. Apart from the financial part of it, I was also concerned about my CV, the impact it has taking such time out, and how employers would view this break. And then there's all these opportunities that are on the table. I did worry a lot about whether they'll come back again. And then apart from those three, there was obviously the other part that we can't get away from, which is rumors. And we all know how fast gossip travels. And so I had to be careful living in a small town, a little nervous about, well, how does the news go out and what is the perception that's then created?
So how did you build up the courage to do it?
Well, I sort of, I guess, came up with 4 answers to these concerns I have. On the financial part, I looked at how much I have in terms of savings and figured out that if I ran out of my savings and I still didn't get back to work, then I could always get a job to pay bills. I didn't need to have something that was going to be so career focused. It just needed to be something to pay the bills, and that I was comfortable and confident that I could easily do. And then the second question was around, well, how does an employer perceive a gap like this on your CV? Well, I thought, well, if an employer has an issue with how I wish to live my life and some of the decisions I take, that's really not an employer for me. So that concern was not there. And then in terms of the opportunities, well, and I'd say to everybody else is the only reason why I have and you have and others have opportunities on the table is because of the hard work that we put in and what we have to offer. So by taking a break, what's changed? That's not changed. So if these opportunities are not on the table, there'll be others. And gossip, well, it keeps me alive in the network, so it's not so bad.
That's a great way to look at it. And you mentioned that, you really loved the company and the team that you worked with. Was that what scared you most about stepping out from a big corporate?
Well, certainly that was a consideration. I really did enjoy the people that I worked with, and I loved the company. I loved the brand. I really felt comfortable there, and that's what made it so hard. But I knew that I was comfortable with my business plan in a future entrepreneurship and my ability to help customers solve their supply challenges. I was very interested in getting involved in different industries, and I'm really curious about a lot of different things, and so I felt like that was the direction I needed to head. But I did worry about not working for a known company and needing to explain my work and my firm. I found this was easily solved with a company name, a logo, and a tagline on a business card. And that allowed me to present myself and introduce my firm talk a little bit about the work that I did, which often led to a new contact and also a deeper discussion with someone about that, rather than the assumptions that might have occurred when I simply referenced my current employer. So I think it was something I was able to overcome, although quite daunting at the beginning.
When did you know you were ready to go back to work, Ruchi?
So I have to share a little story with you, and I'll try to be brief. I was in London, and I met one of my niece, and she's 18 and just about to start university, and I was spending some time with her. And she told me, just like that, out of the blue, she said that I really inspire her and give her courage to dream and push boundaries. And she told me that I was her role model, and she really meant it. And it made me think, because I have cousins and aunts and nieces and friends and colleagues who have been very kind and said similar things to me before, but I never really thought much about it. But this time it was different. I did think about it. And maybe I thought about it because I wasn't so distracted with deadlines and emails and tired from traveling all the time. And what I thought was, well, why did she choose me? And how did I make a difference in her life? And what I realized was that where I had come from to where I am, the community that I grew up in, I have actually achieved quite a lot. And in that process, to these women, I became an example. So I actually found my purpose just from that one conversation with her. I initially started off my career with the purpose to create an identity for myself, but now I have to make the next part of my journey to move from being an example to helping others become examples.
That's fantastic, Ruchi, and I think many of us could empathize with the pressures of time and emails and inability to actually sort of think deeply about where we're at in the world and in our career. And what about you? Do you think there's been any unexpected benefits from taking time out, other than learning to play the guitar, of course?
Well, we'll see how that turns out. But I do think this has been incredibly positive. I have found that I prioritize things that are important to me: family activities, fitness, healthier eating, and I do really appreciate the control of my time and my schedule. I've strengthened my network, and I've spent more time developing relationships. But I think one unexpected benefit has been the time to learn and explore topics that are impacting our profession, as well as various services available to supply chain leaders. I never had the time to do that to the extent that I would have liked. And so it's really been very positive. I feel like I'm learning more, which is keeping me motivated and interested. I think I've also found myself to be much more patient. I'm calmer. I'm not as stressed because of the load from commuting and email and other daily activities. And so I've found that I'm much happier and calm and willing to take on challenges. But I think my perspective has broadened, and I'm thinking more strategically, and I feel more future oriented, as opposed to ticking off all of the daily requirements that I might have had in my past career.
You're a walking advertisement for taking time out. Ruchi, I've heard you say that you feel more focused, more balanced, and that makes you feel invincible. What part do you think the career break played in that?
It played a huge part in it. I had time to reconnect with myself and people that I care about and who care about me, and not necessarily the logo on my business card, which I found it was a lesson for who stayed in touch and who picked up the phone when I'd call during my time off, because it makes a difference, your identity versus the company's identity. And I had the mental freedom to actually recalibrate. So I could think about why I was doing things and what next. And all of this, it helped me to refocus on what's important and what I chose to care about. So to that comment I made to you about feeling invincible, well, I don't fit in, and that's fab. And now with this new energy that I want to help others stand out, that's quite it's quite empowering, and it makes me feel invincible.
I love that. I've been quoting that to everybody, Ruji. You made a big impact on me. Perhaps we can turn to you, Tony. Both Ruji and Anne have mentioned that obviously, there is a level of trepidation associated with taking time out, and a part of that, of course, is no longer having a big company brand to sit behind you. And I think even more so, a lot of people worry about what that gap on their CV will say to recruiters and employers. As a recruiter, what do you really think when you see career break on a CV?
Oh, well, thank you, Lisa. And look, firstly, I want to say congratulations to Ruji and Anne. I loved listening to your inspiring stories. Both of you have made courageous decisions to take breaks in your careers, and that's just so terrific to hear. So what I really think when I see a career break on a CV, well, I'd start off by assuring our listeners that it's one, perfectly okay. I think gone are the days where it's frowned upon, and personally, I won't overlook a great CV for an opportunity because of it. People are taking breaks, short or long, for loads of different reasons, and whether that's forced, for example, due to a role redundancy, which is becoming the norm in today's market, or voluntary, such as to study, travel, or raise a family, or care for a loved one. I mean, that list can go on. There's often a really good reason behind it, and it's something I usually explore when I'm having a conversation with someone.
What about the timing of a career break? Do you ever look at a gap on a CV and think, well, that's the wrong time to take a break? Ruji mentioned she was, really in the midst of a booming phase of her career when she decided to step out. Do you think there's a wrong or a right time?
No, I don't believe there is. People are taking breaks at different stages of their careers, and I think timing ultimately comes down to individual circumstances. If it's forced, due to a redundancy, well, that's beyond your control, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're not a top performer or that you're not highly valued by your employer. And while that initial shock of your role being made redundant can be a bit of an emotional period for some, it's a perfect opportunity to take time out for self-reflection and doing what's important to you. We've heard Ruji talk about that and Anne talk about that earlier as well, just about that self-reflection and recalibrating. So I just think, imagine how great it would be to spend more time with your loved ones and friends, or do the things you've been dreaming of, but you couldn't because you had no time. I think taking a break presents a valuable opportunity to reassess your skills and plan for your future career steps. I've seen many people make a complete career change and have gone on to achieve greater things. While others like you, Anne, you've moved into self-employment, or Ruji, you've got your mojo back, and I think that's really important. But on the flip side, if you've chosen to resign for a career break, then I'd actually encourage all listeners to have a strategy in place for your return to work. Simple things like setting clear objectives and goals, staying connected with your networks, and keeping up to date with news and the latest trends in procurement are all important factors to consider. And I just think whatever the circumstance, just enjoy the time out, because before you know it, you'll be back to work and you don't want to look back with regrets. So I just say go for it.
So in that case, Tony, how do you think you should best position a career break on your CV, or perhaps when you're asked about it during an interview?
Of course. Well, on your CV, I'd recommend you simply list the time off as a career break, and you may or may not wish to include the details of what you did during your time off. And I think the same applies to your online profiles in Procurious or in LinkedIn. Whilst at the interview, I think it's really important to openly share your time off experience. Be transparent about why you chose to take the break. If you feel comfortable, although I appreciate that in some cases, those reasons might be, quite personal. For some people it might be poor health, for example, and that's okay. But just state it was for personal health reasons. People are generally very compassionate, and great interviewers or recruiters, they'll display empathy no matter the reason. So, just be honest and open, and people will respond favourably, I think.
And I think it was an excellent point you made, Ruji, earlier, that if a business or an employer can't appreciate why you might choose to live your life a certain way, or why you wanted to create that space in your life, and perhaps that indicates a misalignment of values anyway. So I think that's a really good point, well made. With the rise of the gig economy, there's certainly been an evolution in attitudes towards flexible working, and I think a recognition that millennials particularly have strong motivations around work-life balance, particularly when it comes to travel. So I guess, Tony, organisations these days surely can't afford to take old-fashioned attitudes towards career breaks if they are serious about hiring and retaining top talent. How do you think organisations have changed their thinking on career breaks?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they've come a long way, and I do feel that, organisations are more open to the idea that people would like to go and pursue, some other interests in their lives. I work with some corporates, for example, that are offering up to 12-month career breaks as part of their HR policies to allow their people to leave and try other things. And, whilst they might not be promised the same role when they return to the organisation, there's an opportunity for them. But, they're bringing back some value, and I think when people are taking that time out, for example, if people are travelling and they might be working overseas, they're coming back with some newfound skills and experiences, and I think that only brings, further value to the individual, but also to the organisation and their objectives.
Absolutely. Anne, having come from a big corporate like McDonald's, have you come across great career break programs or sabbaticals? And was this the kind of discussion that you ever encountered from anyone in your team considering a career break?
Well, thank you, Lisa. I welcome the opportunity to talk about both sabbaticals and returnships. I have had experience with both. McDonald's benefits included an 8-week paid sabbatical after 10 years of service, as well as an additional week of vacation every 5 years called Splash. And I've seen an increased desire for employees to receive time to volunteer at either a company-sponsored event or one of their choosing. I know of one supplier that hosts Volunteer Week, encouraging all employees to spend at least one day supporting a worthy cause. And some employers offer matching contributions for employees' volunteer hours. And additionally, in the U.S., there's really strong support for extended leaves related to families such as a birth, adoption, or medical need. Sabbaticals are not only rejuvenating for the employee, but their absence really creates a development opportunity for someone to fill in as well. This might allow someone to explore whether they like a role or for them to learn new skills. One example I can share is a category leader that filled in for a field supply chain manager on a sabbatical and found that he enjoyed a fast-paced operations role covering a multi-state territory and later moved into that role permanently. So it was a very good experience for him, and the person on sabbatical left with the assurance that their position was going to be covered adequately.
A recent study by PwC, I think, showed that 70% of women here in the UK still feel very anxious about taking time off, even to start a family. And I suspect it's a similar number for anyone, regardless of gender, thinking about taking time off. Based on the work that you've been doing, Ruji, how do you think employers can reassure women and probably more generally anyone who's thinking about returning to work after time off?
I mean, first of all, we have to have these conversations more openly, and we need to create an environment where people are comfortable that they can have these conversations without feeling that there's a hidden agenda or opportunities will be taken away from them. So we need to have certain, if you like, strategies in place. Let's work to prepare them for these breaks. We have discussions around development opportunities, and let's understand how that works on a personal level as well. Speaking recently to a group of women, I hear from them that they don't think about career progression because they don't think about starting a family because they're more nervous about what that does to their career plans. So then they put off having a family, but they're not sharing this obviously at work, because how does that reflect on them as a professional? But then once their career starts taking off and they have these opportunities, they're faced with the same dilemma again. It's choosing career over family. So we need to work proactively, have strategies in place, create an environment where people feel comfortable to have these conversations. And also we need to realize that when women do return or someone's taken some time off, whether it be for a long career break or for sickness or looking after other family members, when they come back, what do they come back to? What kind of a role do they come back to? What type of an environment do they come back to? We shouldn't bring them back to underutilized roles, because once someone's taken a break for whatever reason it is, it's not that their capability has suddenly diminished. So we need to be much more sensitive about these things.
Absolutely. And I mean, we all off-ramp for different reasons. You know, as you mentioned there, it might be the death of a partner, or could be the desire to learn a language or write a novel, learn to play the guitar. Tony, in your view, how do you think employers can do a better job of managing career breaks?
Well, I'm a strong believer, and the word engagement is used, over and over. But I think particularly for people who are not leaving the organisation, but just staying connected with their people. Ruji, you've just made some really good points around, women returning from parental leave into the workforce, and your story just resonated close to home to see my wife going through that journey we've got 2 kids, so on a couple of occasions. And I've seen her work for one particular employee doing a great job in re-engaging her back into where she wants to be with her career. But I think just keeping communication channels open. Maybe just trying to set up quarterly contact with their people while they're away, and looping people in with any change initiatives or what's happening in the organisation. I mean, people are leaving the organisation to take some time out, or for whatever reason, but they still want to feel connected to their community, and that's their workplace in some regards. So making them feel engaged, I think that's key. And I think this applies to people who might be away on sickness as well. People's confidence levels also can change in time when they're away, and I think the best organisations are just keeping those channels open and engaging their people, and making them feel good about the return to work, and providing the career pathway for them, and not just putting them in roles for the sake of a seat that needs filling.
That's such an important point, Tony, that people can lose their confidence when they're out of work for an extended period of time, and I believe that's why returnships are being pioneered successfully in the US, where they're encouraging people to return to work after quite significant career breaks. Anne, have you come across these formal returnship programs during your time?
I have. When I was an employee at Sara Lee Corporation, the organization piloted a returnship program offering part-time permanent positions to women that had left their job to raise a family. And this was a very popular program, with most employees finding the solution very effective. One key enabler, though, was support from our CEO at the time, Brenda Barnes, who had notably left an executive role to raise her own family. So she was a great sponsor for that activity. I've also heard of JP Morgan Chase's reentry program, which is offering vice presidents and above who have voluntarily left the workforce for personal priorities, providing them support and resources, networking, mentorship, and so forth to resume their careers. I've also worked with a supplier that successfully assisted companies in setting up recycling programs by hiring mothers of school-aged children to work during school hours. So they actively sought out these very high-quality employees, but within a time frame that would work in their personal lives. And then certainly I've heard of computer training and other skills training that would be necessary for someone to re-enter the workforce and ramp up quickly. Oftentimes after a separation, or as you refer to it as redundancy, there may be an outplacement firm that assists employees in learning new skills, ranging from anything from interviewing to some sort of certification.
Ruji and Tony, I'm this might be career limiting to announce on the air, but I'm definitely thinking about a career break now. I wonder, do you have any tips for how to handle the timeout so that you can maximise your chances of this being a positive career move? Bruji, perhaps we'll start with you. Do you have any tips?